Now, to your article about coal closures, Kevin, the giant Liddell power station in the Hunter Valley has just been closed as part of the former Liberal Energy Minister Matt Keane's plan to go renewables. Both the new Labor government of Chris Minns and the federal Albanese government say everything is fine, nothing to worry about in terms of blackouts and high prices. Why are you arguing that they are wrong?
Well, simply because you just can't replace coal-fired power facilities with wind and solar and assume that everything's going to be fine. This notion that there's nothing to see here, the transition's going to be seamless, everything's going to be fine, is a folly, right? Because coal-fired power plants provide stable and affordable baseload electricity 24/7 in a stable and predictable manner that doesn't have a negative impact on it doesn't wreck the grid because it's stable, it's predictable. Wind and solar work very, very differently in the sense that they're intermittent and they're dependent entirely on weather conditions. They're reliant on the whims of Mother Nature and the volatility in the amount of electricity supply that they provide. Threatens the structural integrity of the grid. And so the electricity grid not only has to cope with fluctuations in demand, it would also, with increasing reliance on wind and solar, the electricity grid will also need to cope with the fluctuations in supply, which is the sort of challenge that the electricity grid didn't have to cope with quite as much with the majority of our electricity supply being provided by baseload power stations like coal-fired power generators.
Yeah, no, it stands to reason, Kevin. We've all seen the Australian Energy Market Operator warnings, although it seems like they are sending mixed messages, certain messages before the election and certain messages after. But nevertheless, they have been warning about the risk of blackouts, although, as I said, they've walked some of that back. What do you see as the potential for blackouts? Is that a real fear or is that just scaremongering?
It is an absolutely real fear. It's not scaremongering because AEMO themselves have pointed out when just after the announcement of Liddell's closure was made that there's a risk of 5 hours worth of blackouts affecting 200,000 homes in New South Wales every 3 years over the summer months. And so why the emphasis on the summer months? That's, of course, because demand will be at its peak during the summer months because of air conditioning usage and among other things. And this is something that wind and solar power generators simply can't cope with, simply can't address because of the very nature of the way that they generate electricity. And so the threat is still there. The fact that Liddell has been taken off and we haven't seen any blackout quite as yet is not a sign that we're off the hook. The reason is because electricity demand hasn't peaked yet. We are going to see a higher level of electricity demand as we enter the Australian summer, and the way in which risks have been mitigated somewhat in terms of decommissioning Liddell has largely relied on other fossil fuel generated electricity coming on the grid, for example, Bayswater's upgrade, or being prepared to come on the grid. So we're talking about a new gas plant at Kurri Kurri, potentially Tallawarra B, as well as a set of upgraded interconnectors from Queensland and Victoria and other states, which would be able to sort of hopefully in some way address any shortfalls arising from coal-fired power stations being taken off the grid in New South Wales, which basically means that New South Wales will be more reliant on coal-fired power generators like Kogan, like Halide, like Tarong in Queensland, and the likes of Loy Yang and Yallourn in Victoria.